When I was a child, every time we went to the park and someone had a dog with him, I would want to pet it myself. I understood very well how it worked. You politely ask the owner if you may pet the dog. If they say yes, you stick your hand out and allow the dog to smell it. If the dog approves, go ahead and pet it. Not all owners were approving of their dogs being pet by a strange kid, and not all dogs were friendly, but the majority of the dogs and owners I met approved. And I always held those moments of making a temporary new friend in high regard. In fact, there were several dogs that were recurring visitors to the park, and I had met on a regular basis. Like Chip, the wire-haired Dachshund, Hal, the German Shepherd, and Fritz, the Golden Retriever. I remember one cloudy summer day, we had the park to ourselves. I was spinning around the soccer field to see how dizzy I could get before I fell to the ground. I got up after the fourth or fifth time and noticed an old woman walking a large dog along a paved path in the distance. In hindsight, I'm not sure if the animal she had with her even was a dog. It was very large, larger than any St. Bernard or Mastiff I had ever seen. It had coarse black fur, a hunched back like a hyena, long thin legs with tan stripes, tall pointed ears, and very long jaws. But back then, any large animal on a leash was a dog, at least in my eyes. I ran to my parents and pointed to the big dog over there, asking them if I could pet it. As soon as my dad saw the huge animal, his face turned cold. I could see his hand shaking. Then he turned to me. "No," he said with a stern look. "Stay away from it." My mom looked at Dad confused. As soon as she turned her head and saw the large dog as well, though, she gained the same cold expression. "Your father's right," she said. "Don't go near that dog." I wondered why they said that. Usually they were perfectly fine with me petting people's dogs, as long as the owner was alright with it and the dog was friendly. What was it about that particular dog that made my parents so afraid like that? A few weeks passed. One day, we were once again alone at the park. This time it was just me and my dad. I was playing in the sandbox when I suddenly heard a creaky and scratchy voice calling me. "Little boy, over here." I lifted my head and was surprised to see the old lady from a few weeks ago, with that enormous black dog with her. I walked towards her, curious as hell. Back when I first saw them, I had been paying attention to the dog. I had never noticed how strange the old lady looked until now. She was wearing a red hood over her head and a raggedy blue and white dress. Her skin was a pale, rotten yellow color, and her face was wrinkled, with a hooked nose and thin lips. Her hair was white, and her hands were skinny, wrinkled, and bony. She looked almost exactly like one of those witch decorations you see in stores during the Halloween season. She beckoned me with one of her bony fingers and claw-like nails. "Come here, little boy," she said in an almost hypnotic fashion. I stepped closer. She pointed at the large, furry animal she had on a leash. No, not a leash. A chain. I hadn't noticed that until now. "I'm sure you like dogs," she said in that creaky voice of hers. "Well, Genghis here loves children. Come over and pet him. Come on." I cautiously stepped close to the dog, Genghis. Genghis just stared at me with his bright orange eyes. Before I could extend my hand for him to sniff, however, I heard the sound of my dad yelling at me. He grabbed me and dragged me away before scolding me for disobeying his orders to stay away from that dog. "But Dad," I whined, "she said he was friendly and I could pet him." He didn't want to hear it. He just dragged me into the car and drove me home early. another few weeks passed. We still visited the park, but only when there was a sufficient number of other people there. The old lady and Genghis seemed to only come when there weren't very many people. One weekend, both my parents went on a vacation, and my Uncle Matt came to babysit until they came back. On Saturday, he took me to the park. There were only 3 people there that day, 2 parents and a girl who looked a year or 2 younger than me. After running off to play, I climbed to the top of the jungle gym to watch everything around me. I was surprised to see the old lady from before walking Genghis on his chain across the soccer field. It was only then that I noticed that Genghis didn't walk like a regular dog. He walked with a lumbering motion, more like a bear. I didn't notice the little girl running over to Genghis excitedly. The old lady gestured to the little girl while gesturing to Genghis as well. The girl skipped the "let the dog sniff your hand" step and just started running her hand over Genghis's head anyway. What happened next was extremely fast, yet I remember it perfectly. Genghis opened his jaws really wide, much wider than any dog I had ever seen. Before the girl could react, Genghis lunged his head forward, closing his jaws, and instantly, the girl's arms and legs were sticking out of the sides of his mouth. He then tilted his head back and swallowed her whole, without so much as chewing. The old lady then patted Genghis's head before turning in my direction. I could see the sides of her mouth raised in a creepy fashion, and could feel her eyes watching me. I looked around to see if anyone else had noticed the girl being eaten. The girl's parents were just sitting at a picnic table chatting, and didn't seem to notice their daughter was gone. Uncle Matt was reading a book at another picnic table and didn't appear to realize anything was wrong. I leapt off the jungle gym before running over to Matt and frantically telling him that we needed to go right now. He asked me why, apparently not knowing about the old lady and Genghis like my parents did. I didn't tell him why, just that we needed to go. So we did. I never went to that park again. Neither did I ever see the old lady or Genghis after that last incident. I didn't talk about them with my parents or anyone else. To this day, I still have so many questions. What kind of animal was Genghis if he wasn't a dog? Was he a flesh and blood being? Or some kind of demon that the old lady was holding captive? On that note, was the old lady even human? Or was she some sort of supernatural being herself? And what about my parents? Did they have some sort of encounter with the old lady and her dog? Which is why they were so afraid of them and didn't want me to go near them? Maybe these questions will be answered someday. Maybe they won't. But whatever the answers are, I've never asked to pet other people's dogs ever again.